Yesterday, big announcement, huge announcement. Oh, well, actually, there were quite a couple of announcements about involving Winston Peters yesterday. And I particularly enjoyed his comments. I have to say, he was with Sean this morning, I think, on Sean's show. But I did enjoy his comments to do with corporate manslaughter. I've long argued. In fact, I argued as a member of parliament, can I just say, for a new crime of corporate manslaughter to be in this country. This goes back to when I was a young MP, I think about 1991. I remember a young boy being killed on a New Zealand railway train. I can't remember his name. I will have to Google it and find it for you. I think he was 8 or 9 years of age, and he was walking in between. In those days, we used to have passenger trains, and he was walking in between two passenger trains, the two passenger compartments of a train that was operational. And it came apart as he was making the transition, and he slipped, fell, and was crushed to death. And I'm sure it was a New Zealand Railways train. And from memory, or New Zealand Railways as it was at the time, there was a history of a lack of care and attention shown to basic care and safety. It was known that this danger existed. And I could never quite understand why the crime of corporate manslaughter wasn't involved in this country. Another classic one was Cave Creek, if you remember that. Oh, you won't remember it, Josh, you were too young. Again, 13 young people killed, others maimed from that. And now it is being used again for the disaster, Pike River disaster. And the suggestion that it should be brought back. And Winston Peters is very much in support. The government aren't. But listen, if Winston Peters just crosses the floor and this private member's bill from Camilla Bellich is brought in from the Labour MP, it may cross. And I tell you what, I won't be opposed. We will be raising this issue later on. All right, but the other big announcement yesterday that Winston Peters made was that two new 200-metre, that seems a big boat to me. I don't know what the new ones are. Oh, I meant to say ship, aren't I? 200-metre rail-enabled Cook Strait ferries are to be built by a Chinese company for a fixed contract price of $596 million. Gosh, that's cheap. And they're due to enter service in about 4 years' time, 2029. The announcement of the contract was made yesterday by Rail Minister Winston Peters, and it comes almost 2 years after Kiwi Rail's previous IREX, or Inter-Island Resilient Connection Plan, to replace its ageing ferries was scrapped. If you remember, that was an extraordinarily expensive, and it also, you had to reconstruct completely the reconfiguration, I think, of both Picton and Wellington to accommodate them. Anyhow, that was cancelled by the incoming then Finance Minister Nicola Willis. The substitute, or the new, the substitute for that those ferries has been announced. They'll come into service in 2029, and obviously somebody who's going to be using them is our next representative of the Maritime Union, their communications officer, Victor Billot, joins us now to talk just about that. Victor, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Good morning. Thank you.
Victor, listen, the Maritime Union, you guys used to be bastards once. I remember you guys, back in the 1960s and 70s. It was hardly a school holidays. You weren't on strike. You've cleaned your act up quite a bit, haven't you?
Well, yes, I mean, that might be one way of looking at it. Obviously, obviously the union is smaller these days. I mean, there used to be a lot more people working in New Zealand coastal shipping, which we don't have much of anymore. That's a problem. And of course, the waterfront's become a lot more just through technology. The number of workers has dropped a lot. So, but yes, we still like to think we have our traditions, keep our traditions.
Oh, so I will be waiting for the next school holidays for just a little bit of industrial action, will I?
I don't think so at the moment. Look, with the ferries at the moment, it's I think the issues there a lot more to do with what we're actually doing with getting them than the actual crewing of them.
Then running them, yeah. Is it still a
Yeah.
preferred job? I mean, the ferries have had an interesting reputation in terms of the people who crew them. Is it still but it always used to be a job that people used to quite like. Is it still got that attractiveness about it as an occupation?
Well, I think, like with a lot of blue collar jobs, the wages and conditions have declined over the years. I mean, obviously, it's the crew you have there are skilled workers. There's seafarers, the catering staff, um, and it's a specialist type of job in a specialist industry. But it's very important for New Zealand. But I don't think there's possibly it's the terms and conditions aren't as good as they were. Um, and you might have your own opinions about why that is, but it's an important job, I think. The problem we have at the moment, of course, is that just outside the ferries is it's an ageing workforce, and there's very little support for coastal shipping, and New Zealand governments don't seem to rate it, whereas they tend to invest a lot in roads, but shipping is seen as not quite as important.
Yeah, the demise of coastal shipping is something that I've noticed in my lifetime as well. And every time somebody wants to rejuvenate it, then you just see more trucks on the road. Um,
Mm.
Nonetheless, Maritime Union, the announcement yesterday from your point of view of the two new ferries, I'm interested in your reaction.
Well, it's been a long and winding road, that's for sure.
It sure has.
Um, and I guess we could say that two key positives for us and the whole thing, which we see as wins, that we're going to get those new ferries, and they're going to be rail enabled, which we think is very important for the future of rail and the ferries in New Zealand, our overall transport system. So we were pleased to see that. We were also pleased to see that the business model will keep those ferries, it looks like, in some form of public control, public ownership, which we think is important for essential infrastructure, which is really what the ferries are. They're not really just a conventional business. The north-south connection, the State Highway 1, they're an extension of State Highway 1, and
Mm,
they need to be treated as essential infrastructure.
mm.
So we're happy with those results, and to give them his credit, the Minister of Rail, Winston Peters, has certainly taken on board our views. He's listened to us, so we have no complaints there. We have a few, obviously, there's some downsides to the whole way it's played out, of course.
Okay, well, tell me what the downsides are then from your point of view.
Well, we're going to be waiting another 3 years for those ferries, which would have been up and running very soon. The $671 million, it seems, I mean, a lot of figures are being thrown around at the moment, I think, and the reality is that in a lot of cases they're just estimates and assumptions, but certainly in terms of by the decision by the finance minister to can the IREX project, that came with a cost, $671 million in break fees and sunk costs, etc., which doesn't seem to kind of get referred to very much anymore. So that is money down the drain. We've got nothing for it.
Yeah,
We
but
have
that
to
was
wait for another
because,
few
wasn't it?
years.
I mean, I remember reading those stories at the
Yep.
time. It was because the numbers just kept on increasing in terms of the costs. It got into the billions.
Yes. Well, I mean, what we're getting now is certainly the problem was with the landside costs. That was
That's right.
always the problem, not the actual ferries themselves. The ferries we're getting now aren't quite as big. They're not
Are
quite
they
as
as
good
big
as
as
the
the ferries
emissions.
we've got at the moment, Victor?
They're much bigger than the one and more, no doubt about it, they'll be much more capable modern vessels than the ones we've got at the moment. So it is
Right.
an improvement on what we've got, no doubt about that,
Yeah.
and well overdue. But they aren't quite as big or emission friendly as the ones they were going to get, and they're costing a little bit more. The landside infrastructure, that's a good point. There was obviously a problem with the cost there. However, it's kind of hard to kind of directly compare what's happened now because what they were going to build was going to be, you know, would have lasted for 100 years. It was going to be earthquake proof, etc., etc. Now, you can argue that was a overspend, and what the government's done now is Winston Peters has done is kind of pulled that in, and they're just really refurbishing what exists at the moment. But that it's a lot cheaper. But I think that you have to ask: is that, in case of an earthquake, in case of how long it's going to last, it's probably not going to have that length of life. So there are upsides and downsides, but no doubt about it. Yes, you're right. There was a problem there with the cost. Whether it was worth cancelling the whole thing and starting again is, I guess, an academic question now, because that's what's happened.
Now we've still got three. Just please explain to me. I'm a bit. We've got three ferries. Is that right currently that are in service from the New Zealand Rail point of view, or Rail New Zealand, and then we've got the Blue Bridge one. Is that correct, or are there more than that?
Well, it's a no, but I don't. Everyone's getting a little confused with it at the moment because it's evolved so much. But what the situation is at the moment is there were three Interislander ferries, obviously
Yep.
operated by Kiwi Rail. Now, only one of them was rail enabled currently, but it has just been sent off to the wreckers. So we're
Which
down to
one's that one?
two. The Arahura.
The Arahura.
Sorry,
Okay.
Aratiri. Aratiri, sorry.
Aratiri. Aratiri. Yep.
I'm getting my ferries mixed up. And that was, that's been in the news a little bit over the last few years.
Yes,
They're all end of
that
life.
tried to find a new route to the South Island, I think. Is that the one?
Yes, and there were problems, it was problems. That's right. Well, it was trying to find a route to the North Island, I think. But anyway, it wasn't successful in what it was trying to do. And there were
Yeah, yeah.
problems with the
They got
engines,
bored.
breaking down and so forth as
Yeah.
well. So there's many problems. So what
So,
we've got at the
so,
moment,
so of the three Inter-Islanders, only one was rail enabled. That was the Aratiri, but that's gone off to the Knackers Yard now, so we've only got two.
yes,
Is that right?
yes, and that's
Right.
right. And that looks like that's going to be for the next, until the new ones arrive. That's supposed to be in 2029.
Right.
Now, issue with this is that you have that is a problem, because if you've got down to two ferries, now ferries have to go into dry dock all the time. They have to be maintained. If there's any, especially with the end of life vessels, there's often technical issues. So, and there's a large cost that is also attached to maintaining older vessels, which is what they're having to do. So we've got 3 years to get through yet, of course, in the meantime, they're having to double handle rail cargo that's going onto the ferries, because obviously the two ferries at the moment, the old ones, aren't rail capable. So and we've lost jobs because one of those ferries was taken off. So that's not a good thing, because we're losing a skilled maritime workforce here, and people aren't going to wait around for 3 years.
Oh, good
If
point.
they're either going
Yes.
to retire or go
So
away.
what about the Blue Bridge? Is that that's the
Yes,
private one that goes across? Is there just one of
yes,
those?
yes, and that's right. That's another. That's the other operator on the Cook Strait, and we have members on those vessels, obviously the seafarers. Um, the difference there, of course, is it's privately owned, and the vessels are not rail enabled, and there's no
They're not
indication
rail enabled,
they
are
will
they?
be. That's not their part of it. But they do a lot of the trucks and so forth, and
Yep.
so that's they're there. The interesting thing there, though, is it's not confirmed yet, but it sounds like they're going to be sold to another company, overseas company. So I guess the only problem we see with Blue Bridge, some people say, "Oh, why is it not all privatised?" Well, the trouble is, of course, is that if there's a private company there and they just decide overnight, well, it's not working for us anymore, they can just get out of it, and then what are you left with? Whereas that's, I think, what's important to have Kiwi Rail in the mix here with those inter-island ferries, is they can continue to operate, and have to, because if we lose that connection, we don't have the state hire one is cut in half, basically.
So, I also imagine, though, that if we're reducing the number of inter-islanders from three to two, that booking a Cook Strait ferry at sort of family holiday time and school holidays is going to become more expensive, not less. Yeah, just some people through supply and demand.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, that it's quite possible, and if there is, going forward, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because if there's a lot of pressure put on Kiwi Rail to make bigger returns on those ferries, then uh, that money will come from somewhere, and it'll probably come from cargo and passengers. I draw an analogy here just about there's a lot of talk about the Kiwi Rail, the ferries. They have to operate as a business. Well, obviously they need to operate in an efficient and effective way, but the problem with just seeing them as a cash cow, or they've got to make money, is that it's like ports. Their real job is to facilitate the real economy, the functioning economy. So if they're seen as purely making money, and that comes out of like massive charging for people using them and so forth, it can have all sorts of other downsides for the actual real economy. So we see them as kind of more of an infrastructure. I guess that's getting a little, into the business model, but that's our perspective on that.
Right. Okay. And the other thing is, if you've only got two, it seems to me, and we've had two historically, but if you've only got two and one breaks down, you've got a real problem, it seems to me. Does that worry you as well? It's coping with the next 4 years?
Oh, certainly. That I think that's the big hole in the kind of plan here. Of course, so we're happy that the project's back on track, in the sense that we are getting those rail-enabled ferries on the way, and the Minister of Rail, I think, has done a pretty good job of improving how things were. But personally, I think those questions need to get asked to Nicola Willis, because she was one who decided it was, that was the pull the plug. Well, that's fine, but there've been a lot of downstream consequences to that, and one of those is we are now down to two very old Kiwi Rail ferries. They're not rail enabled, and that, you're quite right. If one of them goes out of service for whatever reason, we're down to one. And if it's a problem with Blue Bridge, then that they might have, and because their vessels have problems too, because they're quite old vessels too. I mean, this is a problem, I think, with the infrastructure, the shipping infrastructure and port infrastructure, is with the lack of investment. We're dealing with some old dungers here, and you have problems with them. It's like just having like an
Well,
old car.
the two ferries that are there at the moment, the Kairahi and the Kaitaki,
Yes.
they're relatively recent, aren't they, in terms of their purchase? I think they came from the UK. Is that right?
Yes, but they're not. They weren't new vessels, so they're not. They weren't quite as old as the one that's been retired, but I believe both of them are 25 plus years old, which for a ferry, so they're like buying a second-hand car. So they're quite, they're getting towards the end of life too. I think the thing which needs to also be taken into account is the Cook Strait's not really a normal piece of water. It's one of
No,
the
that's true. Yeah.
roughest and very hot, can have very rough weather conditions here, and we don't want an instant. I mean, heaven forbid. I mean, that's what the Wahine was about, a vessel that was driven onto the rocks with the engine problems, was driven onto the rocks, and the outcome was a disaster, absolute disaster. And we have had issues where the current ferries there have lost power or suffered from some kind of outage there, and could have been worse than what it was, if you know what I mean. So, our members are out there every day working on them, so, they're very aware of the potential things can go wrong.
All right. But as a general rule, you're happy with the announcement yesterday that at least something is going to happen, and that your workforce now. Well, that's the other thing. If you've got, I'm assuming the Aotearoa now that it is off to the wreckers, the workforce has dissipated already, has it? Gone?
Well, yeah, because the reality is that, and that's a wider problem, is that the New Zealand shipping industry is in real trouble, and vessels are being taken off all the time. We've got another problem with another one, the Wholesome cement carrier. They're trying to, introduce a foreign crew to do that on the New Zealand coast. So it's basically New Zealand maritime workers, skilled New Zealand maritime workers. It's an ageing workforce, so they're either going to leave, retire early, or if they're younger, they will be able to pick up work probably in Australia and very well paid, and much better paid than it is here. So it's just like everything else. It's that is the problem when you can't treat a workforce. You can't just say, well, we don't have a place for them now, but that they're just going to go into cold storage for 3 years and come back when we need them. So that is a problem, and I don't think anyone's really faced up to that really in terms of the management or the government.
How many staff do I have to employ on a ferry on any given day? What's the staffing rate?
Well, I couldn't actually give you an exact number because it's not just us, the Maritime Union, the seafarers, the catering staff, but then there's officers and
Oh,
engineers.
right. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I would it would be it would be around probably the 50 100 mark. Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah.
of course because they're carrying passengers, normally ships don't have that many staff, but there's a lot of catering staff that and that are required to look after the passengers.
Thank you for your time, Victor. I appreciate that. We'll keep in contact, and I wish you well in trying to divine the next 4 years.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, all right, Victor Billot, the Maritime Union Communications Officer.